How much does it cost to have a baby? Why is IVF, surrogacy, adoption all so expensive? Whether you are just starting to learn about the true financial cost of infertility, or you are well aware and you're looking for innovative ways to meet your goals, listen to this interview with Angela Rastegar, co-founder and CEO of Sunfish, a company dedicated to financial solutions for family building. Welcome to the Baby or Bust Fertility Podcast, the podcast with interviews and in-depth discussions on reproductive health, created to support anyone curious about infertility, miscarriage, and early pregnancy. I'm your host, Dr. Lora Shahine, a double board-certified OBGYN and reproductive endocrinologist and former fertility and IVF patient myself, helping build families for almost 20 years, and I am dedicated to supporting and educating you on your family building journey. Angela, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Really, really happy to connect with you. And you have so much valuable information to help patients trying to navigate the true cost of having a baby sometimes. And I'm just really curious about how you founded Sunfish, how you came to this part of the fertility world, just a little bit more about you.
Yeah, so my roots are actually in Silicon Valley. I spent many years working in tech, had started several other companies before, and was actually working as a venture capitalist at a time when many of my friends were starting to go through fertility journeys. And I was looking around, seeing all these wonderful women I know stressing about trying to build their families. And at the same time, I was seeing pitches for yet another app to improve food delivery or things that just didn't feel like they were really hitting on this incredibly growing need that so many people in my community had, which was to figure out how to build their family, especially if they had been waiting or, were in an LGBTQ couple and had some other pathway in mind for building their family. So that really frustrated me. And I am a doer and a solver. So I started looking into the industry. My background's actually in reproductive health. That's what I studied originally academically in undergrad. And I ended up linking up with one of the biggest fertility companies, a surrogacy agency, to join their team and to try to bring some of my knowledge to the work that they were doing. And I got to meet people from every element of the fertility world, as well as thousands of individual families that were trying to have kids. And immediately the cost came up as one of the biggest stressors and pain points for people who are trying to use assisted reproductive technologies. I saw such heartbreaking stories, I'm sure any of us in the field have, including yourself, of people, moving in with their in-laws and Airbnb-ing their house to pay their fertility bills or selling their engagement ring. And it really broke my heart just to see that there weren't solutions out there to help people afford this process. So I decided to start Sunfish.
Amazing. So you kind of brought together the knowledge of like creating a company and kind of seeing how funds are being raised, also seeing your friends go through a fertility journey, and then really being that person talking to couples that are trying to figure out how to pay for surrogacy. And you're finding that there's this huge need. And as a doctor, of course, I see that all the time. Infertility is a disease. The World Health Organization, 1 in 6 people has infertility. It is absolutely a disease that can be treated with medical intervention. But yet there's still such a huge gap between the need and kind of the access to care. And so you're trying to kind of find that solution. Let's get into some of the numbers, Angela. Like, what is the cost of IVF or surrogacy or even adoption, just all of these different ways of building your family? I talk to my patients about it, but I'm curious, you have a broader view of a lot of these different numbers.
Yeah, it's a great question. And it actually is sort of hard to understand the answer when you're just starting, because you might see a cost sheet or a price just for the first step of the journey without realizing what the overall cost is going to be for you. So an average IVF baby costs in the US between $60,000 to $70,000. And that's because each IVF cycle comes to about $20,000 or so, including medication. That's retrieval transfers. And it takes most people several cycles to actually go home with a baby. So that's just IVF. Then if you need to use an egg donor, sperm donor, or surrogate, the costs go up from there. So a typical surrogacy journey without an egg donor is about $150,000. And with an egg donor, it'd be about $200,000. Adoption's a great pathway as well. That in the US comes to typically about $40,000 with all of the fees involved. So if you need the help of assisted reproduction, this is a lot of money. And those are just kind of averages. I have personally worked with parents that have had $1 million babies that they spent $1 million on because they had to go through so many attempts. So it's not just that the cost is high, but it's that people don't know how much it's going to end up being once they start this journey.
Yeah, and it is so tough to navigate that with patients and kind of talk to them about what the medical need is, that you might need more than one egg retrieval to kind of find a normal embryo or to have a baby. But if you just do a search online, like how much does it cost to do IVF? I can't tell you how many times I see the number $12,000 to $15,000. I just see that all the time in, magazine articles and things like that. And I'm like, okay, that might just be the basis of IVF. But that's, medications can be $3,000 to $5,000. And then if you have male factor and you need help with fertilizing the eggs, the ICSI, intracytoplasmic sperm injection, that can be $2,000. And then if you do chromosomal screening, pre-implantation genetic testing, that can be $5,000 minimum. So I want people to kind of understand everyone's journey is unique. And as a doctor, I always want to have an optimistic look, like, oh, I really hope you're going to have a baby with just one cycle, but nobody really knows exactly what it will take. And it's just such incredible sticker shock.
Yeah, well, you're exactly right. It is hard to know the exact cost. And a lot of times people will see a number of $12,000 to $15,000, which is typically just the retrieval, just the first step of the journey. So it can be helpful when you start this journey. I know costs are really, really frustrating and can feel scary. It can be helpful to break the journey down into smaller phases, but you really do need to be educated about what your end goal is and how much you think it's going to cost you to build your ideal family so that you can plan. And the reason I feel so passionately about this is I worked with so many people who would jump into this process without a plan or without really knowing what the costs were. And maybe they would take out a high interest credit card or, sell their 401k with the understanding of just that first step of the journey. And when we can take a step back and really help people understand their total family building goals, how many kids do you want? How are you going to get there? And create a comprehensive budget. Maybe that means adding a cosigner for a bigger loan, for example. You can get there a lot of the times in a much smoother path than if you're just jumping in and taking one step at a time, which I think will really help people because once you have a baby, obviously your costs are going to go up even more. So it's really important to me and my team that people are able to develop a comprehensive plan and actually figure out what is it going to take for my family to get to where we need to be.
Yeah. There's so many emotions. Like it's just, we could just say it. It's just not fair. Some people can have a baby in air quotes for free, and you just sort of feel like, or some people have incredible fertility benefits. It really, access to care absolutely depends on what state you live in and what company you work for. In Massachusetts, it's like very good coverage. In the state of Hawaii, it's like one IVF cycle. And like, maybe that's all you need, but that's kind of all that's covered. I'm in the state of Washington where we're working really hard to increase access to care, but it's been on the ballot, just hasn't gotten pushed through yet. We'll try again next year. But even if we get it passed, it still takes a little time to kind of get started. And my patients right now that want a baby right now can't wait. And so it's just beyond frustrating.
You're exactly right. In the US, very few people have full coverage for fertility benefits. And so there has been some progress over the last few years, which is great, with a few more states adding coverage, more employers adding coverage, but we still see the majority of people going through fertility journeys paying out of pocket these very high amounts. And so I think there's a few reasons for that, but overall in the US, there's a lot less just healthcare coverage in general and a lot less support for women's health in general. So I think those challenges have made this very fragmented, confusing landscape for people. And we at Sunfish offer a number of resources to help people navigate this journey. And we'll see people who maybe have $10,000 of employer benefits or coverage for one cycle, but not genetic testing, for example, coming to us to get that additional support as they go through this process.
Yeah, I love working with you guys. Sunfish doesn't work with every clinic, but you do work with our clinic at Pacific Northwest Fertility. And I know that patients are going to be able to get comprehensive counseling
Mhm.
and sort of looking at them as a big picture. And I'm just curious, I bet one of the first questions patients ask you is, why is it so expensive? I have my thoughts on this as a doctor, but I'm curious what you tell patients, like, why is IVF so expensive?
It is an expensive process. Well, first of all, there is a lot that goes into it. The lab equipment, the medical facilities, these really highly specialized physicians, that all adds up.
Mhm.
That being said, the US just does not have as much coverage as in other countries, and that impacts our ability to have kids through IVF.
Mhm.
So, as just a simple example, in the US, only about 1 to 2% of babies are born through IVF. But as you've mentioned before, anywhere from 1 in 5 to 1 in 6 couples are actually struggling with infertility. And in countries like Denmark, where there is a lot more coverage, we see about 10% of families utilizing IVF and fertility treatments to have children. So that gap, I think, is where more resources are needed, more lobbying is needed to ensure that the people who are trying to have kids are able to do so because they're able to afford those resources.
Yeah, it's so interesting. We just heard last week that the US had the lowest birth rate in over 100 years. So just like other countries that are really seeing like fewer and fewer babies being born and sort of thinking into the future about what that means for the economy and for supporting generations, there's absolutely a need. There's LGBTQ families that need help with,
Mhm.
having a baby. I hesitate to say this because it's always the women that get blamed. Like, oh, the women are waiting to have a baby later in life. So it's their fault that they have to do IVF. I just kind of have a problem with that. I think it's a whole societal problem. It's not just the women,
Mhm. Mhm.
and there's like no maternity care guaranteed, there's no daycare guaranteed. Like it's actually pretty hard to have kids. So
Yes.
it's not just that people need IVF and they aren't doing it. It's a bigger problem. But I just sort of see these two things kind of coming together. There's absolutely a need and there is a gap in ability to access that care.
Yeah, we see so many different stories of people coming to us for help. There's definitely a portion of families who've delayed childbearing. Maybe they're in their late 30s, early 40s. We also see about half of our customers are LGBTQ families who are just going to need this type of support to build their families. There's a lot of cancer survivors or people who, have had some medical issue come up during their life where they need the support of assisted reproduction, but then just in general, fertility rates are declining for a lot of different reasons, unknown reasons. But a typical 30-year-old today is less fertile than a 30-year-old 40 years ago. So there's so many reasons that bring people to the door. um,
Mhm.
and it's a lot of times just an unknown reason or there's no real explanation. And I think we talk to a lot of people as they're getting started and realizing, hey, this might not be the plan that I had in mind for how I'm going to build my family, but this is now the path I'm on, which comes with, a lot of fear, or shame, or emotions. And then on top of that, there's this huge financial component to it. So we started Sunfish, my team and I, because we saw so many people in that position. I had many heartbreaking stories of talking to people as they were starting this journey. We'd get to the cost sheet and their faces would just drop. Like there would be silence or tears, and people would tell me, like, Angela, I'm going to need to save up for like 4 years
Mm.
just to even be able to try this process, which really broke my heart. So we wanted to build a company that would bring a lot of that empathy, care, education to the financial side of the equation for people who are going through assisted reproduction. And we offer two products which are really unique. The first is financing, financial support. I'll talk a little bit about that. And the second is an IVF success program. So, as you mentioned, it's really difficult for people to know how many tries is it going to take them to get pregnant. And that impacts the cost and the stress as you're going through this process. And so my team and I wanted to create a program that would offer people a guarantee of IVF working or your money back. So if you enroll in the Sunfish Success Program, which is only offered at select clinics around the country, we work with really exceptional clinics around the country, you would be given a custom package for you and your partner based on your biodata, which includes everything in your cycle, so all of your transfers, etc., as well as a guaranteed refund if you don't get pregnant on the first try. And that was so important to me to create because, like I mentioned, we saw people who are experiencing these wildly dramatic costs without really being able to plan for how much their journey was going to be, while at the same time, my friends in Silicon Valley were innovating and creating these really unique insurance products for buying trips or any kind of purchase online. And that just didn't exist for people who are going through this incredibly expensive process.
We are going to get back to talking to Angela in just a second, but I want to remind you just how important it is to review the show. Follow the show, rate the show, review it wherever you're listening to your podcast right now. It really helps other people find the show, and it helps other people learn a lot about reproductive health. And I really want to get this message out. This is a wonderful review that just came up within the last month. This is from Allison. I love that Dr. Shahine has so many amazing guests on her show that provide comprehensive perspectives on building a family and infertility. I learn something new from every episode, and thank you for being such a fertility warrior. So many women and men can continue to learn about fertility options and overall fertility health. Allison, thank you so much for taking the time to write such a kind and lovely review. Now let's get back to the show. So a question for you, Angela. There have been previous shared risk models with IVF clinics before. And the way that it works is that oftentimes people who had a really good egg count and they're young, they would often pay into this program and not maybe need all the services that were provided. And then people who had a poor chance of success might not even be approved to try.
Yes.
And so this sort of shared risk model has a little bit of a reputation or sort of a like, oh gosh, I don't know if it's always the best thing for the patients. Can you tell me what Sunfish's guaranteed program and how that's different?
Yes, I was really frustrated by those programs as well when I started working in the industry because the people who really need it the most were often not admitted, and they were typically priced as many cycles at a time. So it was expensive. You might have to buy a package of 4 or 5 or 6 cycles up front. So what we did is really different. And I'm so proud of my incredible team of data scientists for building out this really unique model. It's the first of its kind, but we price each cycle at a time. Anyone can apply for the IVF Success Program. It's the same price for everyone, just one cycle. And what we alter is the amount that you get refunded based on your unique biodata and chances of success. And basically our confidence in our ability to predict the price for you to successfully have pregnancy through IVF. And so we adjust everyone's refund based on our predictive model and our certainty around your kind of score at the end of this process. So it's a really different way of approaching it because it's much lower cost. It's just one cycle at a time, and anyone can apply to be a part of the program.
That's amazing. And so then if it's not successful, but they get a refund back, can they reapply and try again?
Absolutely. So you can apply up to 3 times to be a part of the program. And in each time, we'll redo the calculation and package for you. In addition, there's so much outside of the clinic walls that you can be doing that, has oftentimes been proven to increase success too. So we give a whole package and guidance of things that you can be doing vetted by our medical advisors and fertility nurse that works with us, just to help people prepare before their IVF cycle, during, after, to really try to set them up for success during this program. And we'll provide guidance, discounts through other partnerships that we have to try to ensure that you're paying the least amount that you need to pay to go home with a baby. So there's a lot that goes into it that is really comprehensive. And I think in addition to knowing you have that refund, can help alleviate some of the stress of feeling like you're going through this process by yourself without Sunfish.
That's amazing. And just to be clear, this is just for IVF with your own eggs. Is this also a program for donated eggs or surrogacy or things like that?
Yeah, good question. So this is a program for people who are going through IVF, trying to have a baby now. You can use an egg donor or a sperm donor, but the primary patient is intended to be the person who enrolls in this program and carries. So we don't currently offer this for people working with a gestational carrier, but egg donor, sperm donor are fine.
That's amazing. And I just love the fact that nobody is denied. So that was a big just pain point in the past when I've heard about other places providing kind of guarantee or packages. It was like just really painful if, oh, you were above a certain age or your ovarian reserve was below a certain something, that you were just flat out denied. And you're right. It's like those are the people that need a little bit more reassurance and a little bit more backup. And yeah, I just really, really appreciate that.
Yeah, many of us on the Sunfish executive team have been through the process ourselves. So we really understand how stressful and emotional this journey is, and wanted to design an experience for people that was very different, where you feel like you have someone in your corner who's supporting you and working with you throughout the whole process. So we really get it. We know that it's so stressful, and we know how helpful it can be to have that additional kind of support system and resource. And we get so invested in every journey of every person that enrolls with us. We're kind of watching and rooting for them. And I think people can feel that we're on their team as they go through this process.
Oh, that's fantastic. So we've learned about the guaranteed program. What are some of the other services or counseling that Sunfish provides?
Yeah, so our whole vision is to help with financial literacy as people build and plan for their families. So we'll really work with everyone to set their big picture family building goals, and then provide them resources to actually get all of the financial tools that they would need to build their family. So if you come to us, we have resources to help you calculate your costs, kind of estimating the cost of your fertility journey. You can apply for grants and discounts. We have one of the largest searchable grant and discount databases on our site as well. And then if you do need financing, after you go through all of those resources, after you check any benefits you may have, we offer the largest loan marketplace that's specifically set up to support fertility journeys. So we have almost a dozen different lenders that we work with, everything from, super prime with low interest rates to subprime lenders, including lines of credit. You just search for that for free on our site through all of those lenders, and you'll be presented with loan options right away, instantaneously. And if all of that fails you and you're still stuck, for patients or intended parents that are working with one of our partner clinics or partner surrogacy agencies, we actually can set up a human financial advocate call with a person who will kind of talk you through your plan and options and figure out if there's anything more you could be doing to get those resources, or split the journey up into phases. So there's a lot on there. And again, it comes from a place of really deep experience and empathy of us, many of us having gone through this journey ourselves, and just thinking like, what would have been the most helpful resources for me or my friends as we got started on this process.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate your sharing. The people that I do talk to at Sunfish really do seem to have their own kind of experience. And I don't know if you feel comfortable sharing your experience here, but it really could help someone that's listening.
Yeah. So I went through 2 egg freezing rounds when I was younger, many years ago. And it was a really overwhelming process. Now people are starting to talk a little bit more about what it's like and where to go and how difficult the injections are. But at the time, I felt really kind of private about it. I didn't tell a lot of friends that I was going through it. It felt very isolating.
Hmm.
And I was, early in my career trying to save up money. So setting aside that much cash for a process that I wasn't really sure was going to work or I wasn't really sure I needed just added to the overall stress and emotion of the whole thing. So looking back on that time, that was when I was working in Silicon Valley,
Hmm.
running a company. Looking back on that time, I think the things that we now offer at Sunfish of having that financial advocate who can talk to you, having all the loans, having all the educational resources would have been so, so helpful for me.
Yeah. You're providing the empathy and the care that you wish that you had when you kind of went through it. I think that's a lot of what we,
Exactly.
learn about just kind of in this podcast and guests. And, I had my own fertility journey as well. And I just think it really, not that you have to have gone through infertility to create an incredible company like Sunfish or have to go through infertility to be a fertility doctor. But I do think it just gives you a level of understanding. And the financial piece is one of the most emotional parts of this whole journey. And I'm so fortunate to be able to focus on like my medical recommendation and the chances of success. But I am talking to my patients sometimes about just the stress of how much it costs and things people sort of say like, well, I can spend the same amount on a car, Dr. Shahine, but I know I'm going to drive it off the lot.
Hmm.
Like this is a really big expense. And I don't know that the end is going to be what I want and what I go through from there. And so just knowing that they have someone that's kind of helping each individual person's situation and navigation and path and different options is just really exceptional. Before I let you go, I've got one last question for you. For the listeners, are there 3 financial tips that you would recommend for someone that is thinking about learning more about the cost of all of these options?
Yes. First, start with your big picture goals. So, how many kids do you want? How are you going to get there? Really try to understand the full picture of the cost because there are a lot of little elements that really add up. And the more information you can start with, the better equipped you'll be to navigate the whole journey. Second, don't make assumptions. So, you might find that your employer doesn't have fertility benefits, but they might have benefits that cover legal bills or some other part of the journey. So, really dig in and try to understand what resources specifically are available to you. And Sunfish can actually help with that. We have some resources on our website. And third, a lot of people are thrilled to find that some elements of this journey can be tax deductible. Dr. Shaheen and I actually have an Instagram live with a lot of tips on where and when and how to tax deduct some elements of your journey. So there's a few different ways where you can really plan, set yourself up with that comprehensive plan and budget from the beginning, and then figure out all of the resources available to you. And at the very end, what you might be able to tax deduct as well.
I know people who are listening are going to say, oh my gosh, I want to learn more about Sunfish. So let people know like how they can find out about Sunfish and how they can find out if their clinic is partnered with you. Like, what does that mean?
Yes. Well, we would love to talk to anyone, even if you're not at a clinic that's currently partnered with us, because we're adding new clinics all the time. The best place to reach out to us to find more information is joinsunfish.com. That's our website. Or you can follow us on any social media at Join Sunfish as well. If you come to our website, there's a couple different ways to contact us that are right front and center. You can submit your email, call us, text us, and we'll let you know if the clinic that you're currently with offers the IVF Success Program or our loans, or if there's other clinics in your city that do. So it's easy to find us, and we just get so much joy out of being able to help people on this journey and playing a really small part in the family building process. I know it's really stressful, and I think on top of what you shared, when people go through this process, the emotion and stress also comes with anger of feeling like this is unfair.
Mm-hmm.
Why do I have to pay for this?
Yep.
It should be free to build a family. And for so many other people, it is. So there's a lot of anger and frustration around the cost specifically. And I really see our mission as just trying to make that one piece of it a little bit easier and a little bit less frustrating so that people can focus on their health and their ultimate dream of building a family.
Oh, well, I can see firsthand that your mission is being fulfilled because we're so fortunate that Pacific Northwest Fertility partners with Sunfish. And I'm so thankful for what you're doing and just also your holistic approach of also being a resource. Like you can come to the website and there's so many different learning opportunities there and you're willing to talk to people, even if their clinics aren't partnered, you can still learn a little bit about the process. And then even just your sort of vision of like thinking about educating the person as a whole, like not just being like, oh, here's your guarantee, here's your money, but also like, hey, have you thought about your emotional wellness? Have you thought about your lifestyle optimization? Just you guys really look at the full picture and it's just so different. I've been doing this for 20 years, Angela, and it is so different from anything else that has ever come before in this community. And I'm so thankful that you guys are doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much. Well, it's an honor to be able to work with you and your clinic. We absolutely love getting to work with some of the best and most passionate doctors in the industry, including yourself and Pacific Northwest Fertility.
Oh, well, thanks again, Angela. And just one more time, let the listeners know how they can find you.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Shahine. I'm Angela. Our website is joinsunfish.com, or you can find us on Instagram and TikTok at joinsunfish. On our website, you can email us, text us, or call us, and we would be so excited to help you build your family.
I hope you enjoyed this interview and all that we learned today about the true financial burden of fertility treatment and such incredible solutions. Makes me feel a little bit more hopeful. I know we have a long way to go for access to fertility care, but there are people like Angela out there looking to help you find solutions. Find this episode and all others on my website, drlorashahine.com, and you can find it on YouTube as well. Lots of educational content on my YouTube channel, Instagram, TikTok. I just love educating. Please share your own fertility story, topics that you'd like us to cover, people you'd love for us to interview. Send us an email at hello@drlorashahine.com. The link will be in the show notes. Thank you to our friends at Seattle Sperm Bank and Braze Runs Production for sponsoring the show. Thank you to my producer, Shannon Perry, and her team at Audiotocracy. This is your host, Dr. Lora Shahine. See you next week. And until then, wishing you love, luck, and pineapples.